You're going on a journey into the unknown, and the unknown is a place that you will never experience like anything else before. Civil discussions, unpopular opinions, and most of all, it's taken place on the internet. People will say it's a myth, but today, that myth will turn into a historical fact. This is the Hot Takes for Nerds podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hot Takes for Nerds podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about divisive movies, television shows, or we just gather in our unpopular opinions about anything that's usually against the mainstream opinion. Either way, the main goal of this podcast is talk about hot takes on certain nerd culture mediums. And I am not alone, of course. I have two main guests. One is new to this podcast, and the other one is a returning guest from the last episode. So let me go ahead and introduce you to them. My first time guest on this podcast is Ren I can't say your name. I can't say your name.
Just Viera. I think that's how you would pronounce it in English.
Yeah, his YouTube channel is Ren Geekness. So how you doing, Ren?
I'm good, man. Thank you for having me. We know each other for a long time. I've been on the channel, but yes, first time here on the pod, and happy to discuss some very divisive things and one very exciting one.
Yeah, one very exciting one, actually. Yeah, that's the thing that we'll be talking about first.
Okay,
I
so we're
think this
starting
is
on
like
top and going down from there.
going down. That's pretty much what it is. I think this is actually the first time you've live streamed on this channel. Probably we did like a live stream before one time, but it was for like something else. And I actually want to get back to that someday. Like, we talked about like Man of Steel with Durbin and Rachel.
That was awesome.
I actually want to do that again.
It was the three of us, just missing one person from that panel now.
Yeah, that's true.
I think I would actually include like other people, like maybe Rudy, and since he's like a fan of Man of Steel, and Larry, since he's like a dislike of this movie as well. And we can have a bigger crowd and actually get more discussion in.
That would be epic. And Rudy would be on my team, so that would be awesome.
And speaking of that, my returning guest is going to be Christopher Durbin from Durbania. How's it going in California, bro?
It is exciting over here in California, soon to be Texas. So that's all awesome.
Wow.
Can't wait for that to be done. But yeah, it's good. I loved your intro. That was one epic intro. Gives me hope for the internet.
Yeah, that's basically the goal of this channel. I mean, we can have hot takes, we can have unpopular opinions. That doesn't mean that we can't be civil about it.
That's right.
Yeah,
Exactly.
So you're actually gonna be a lot more closer to Sean, Chandler, and Rudy since they live in Texas.
Yes. I'm only I think Sean's in Austin and I'm going to be south of Dallas. So I'm only going to be about 3.5 hours or so away from Sean.
Oh.
So I'm hoping to be able to do more stuff with Sean Chandler and Rudy because that would be really, really awesome. What's up, Dimension Scott?
Oh, I can't actually see the chat. Whoops, I got to get out of this brand comments. Yeah.
There
Hello, Dimension Scott. Mentioning the comments. I'm new to this, so I don't know what I'm doing.
It was just on my podcast, and now he's here. Thanks for being here, Dimension.
Nice. Thanks for joining in, man. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be talking about is Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is actually a last-minute thing that I wanted to include because I just realized I never talked about this show on this YouTube channel, and it's one of my favorite shows ever. Like, at least top 5 or top 3. I love Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I know that you guys really like the show. I think I introduced Durbin to the show, as a matter of fact.
You might have, actually.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember. It's been a little while, but my wife and I just started binging it, and we couldn't stop, so it was good.
Nice.
You own them. I've been presented you the show.
It's weird, because I figured that you would actually watch the show prior before me, like, introducing you to it. It's so weird.
That's your good deed for life.
Yes,
Chandler.
it is.
Yesterday, I presented someone to the Princess Bride for the first time, so that's my good deed for the year.
All right. That's honestly awesome. I think another good deed that I need to do is, like, introduce somebody to, like, John Wick or Blues Brothers, something like that.
There you go.
I'll be the one you present to Blues Brothers, because I still haven't seen it.
Yes! Yes! Sorry. I need to introduce you to that movie.
I'll just watch John Wick again based on your suggestion, so done.
Yes, and if you don't love it, then I will never be your friend again. Okay, just kidding. just for the record, that's my favorite movie of all time, actually.
Blues Brothers.
Nice.
Yeah, Blues Brothers is my favorite movie of all time.
Nice.
Yeah,
Mine
but
is
the
Jurassic Park. So put those dinosaurs in there.
Yeah. Actually, the other reason is because I have this book called The Search. This is where you're able to see what happens to Zuko's mother. I've read halfway. Yeah, it is. Halfway through the book, I've seen some interesting stuff that I didn't actually know. And it's a really fascinating read. And it makes me want to read like other Avatar: The Last Airbender novels. I know this is not like the first novel right after the show. There's supposed to be another one called The Promise. I haven't read that one yet, but I am willing to go ahead and read that just because I want to know what happens right afterwards.
Yeah.
And for the sake of continuity.
Yeah.
That's the best one, though. The Search is the best one. And I haven't read all of them, but The Search is spectacular.
Awesome.
Oh my gosh.
I
Are
love
you
that.
going to say spoiler alert and then tell us what happened to Zuko's mother? Because
Never.
Nah,
sitting here
I'm
and
not gonna do that.
I would never do that. I want you to
Oh,
experience it.
No.
Oh my god.
But what happened to his mother is she disappeared.
Well, yeah.
Like most of the Disney parents, she disappeared.
Oh my
Quote
gosh.
unquote.
Yeah. Anyway, I love this show. I kind of just want to introduce you guys on what's your favorite part of the show, or what makes you enjoy it, or I'm just gonna let you guys get your brief thoughts on what you think of the show, because there's other stuff that I kind of also want to talk about that is related to Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I'm gonna start with Durbin. What do you think of the show? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, so I've only binged through it once, and that's been a few years ago. But from what I remember, just from those initial impressions, I think what really impressed me about the show was, at first you're like watching a kid show. I mean, it's animated and all that stuff, but then it's deep. So it reminded me, like, when you read the Chronicles of Narnia, it's written for kids, but there are layers, and every time you go through it, like, you uncover new layers. And that's what Avatar felt like to me. So when I was watching it, it's like, okay, surface levels for kids, so it's easy to just take in. But the more you digest it, there are so many layers in each episode with the lessons they learned and the things they go through. And it was just incredible. And it never went bad. Like, all the seasons were incredibly good. I never felt like any episode was one of those filler episodes where they just needed to kind of throw an episode in there to meet the quota of how many episodes per season. Every episode was important and crucial, and it carried on the story. It carried on character arcs and development. And it's just one of the most impressive shows that I have watched in a long, and I'm due to go back and watch it again so that I can uncover more layers, because I was blown away. I mean, come on. The fact that Zuko is their enemy hunting them. And then you get to that final season and you have Zuko and our main character doing the fire dance together with the dragons. It's like, oh, come on. That's the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. Some of the best character arcs I have ever seen are on that show.
I'm so happy that I get to actually talk the show with so many other people that love it. Yes, Ren.
And then I watched the M. Night Shyamalan movie, and they can't.
Oh.
Aang. Are you serious? It's Aang.
Oh.
You just watch the cartoon, and they say his name properly. You can't even get his name pronounced right in the movie. Oh, gosh, it's
That's
embarrassing.
only one of the few problems of that
no.
film.
I wish that was the movie's biggest problem.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wish that was.
Well, it shows the real movie.
Katara is a white girl. I have a big issue with that. As a white
Oh
person,
my
I have a big
gosh.
issue with that.
I don't like the actress that played Katara at all.
No. Don't want to bully Nicola Peltz. I believe that's her name, but Christ. Ooh.
Yeah, she's probably an okay person in real life, but my goodness, no.
Well, you got to think it's the direction, right? She could be a great actress, but look at the fact that they say Ong instead of Aang shows how little attention everybody on that film paid to the show. Like, it just shows there was no attention paid to it, even on the level of saying the main character's name right. So it's hard to blame any one actor for not portraying a character right, when you can see, even on this detail of the main character's name, they're not even paying attention.
Ren, what's your brief thoughts on the show?
Oh, so many. To start off, I need to. What will at first seem like I'm contradicting what Chris said. I want to emphasize what he said when he brought up that there are no filler episodes. The one that I think someone could argue is at least semi-filler is the one in the third season where you see the play of their adventures presented through the perspective of the Fire Nation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's such a funny episode.
Yes.
Plus, it's an important perspective that is presented because, on the grand scheme of things, this is a show about discrimination, about cultures clashing, but eventually coming together to create harmony in their entire world. And then, like Chris said, you got the characters that are so rich with compelling arcs. Zuko is by far my favorite character, and I think maybe outside of Vegeta from Dragon Ball, he's the most beautiful redemption story ever told because it's a story told through the span of 3 entire seasons, and it's not a redemption story that gets a cheap way out of death. That 99% of redemption stories nowadays get this out of, oh, I sacrificed myself this once, so now I'm a good guy. No, he does the work. He realizes the error of his ways,
and he
by
falls
the end,
many times. Like he goes back. Yeah,
it's not. He does the work. He stumbles. It's trial and error, and not only does is that redemption beautiful, but then you have a beautiful relationship at its core. That is the relationship of Zuko and Iro, and the development of Iro. When you find out why he's so stubbornly sticking to Zuko's side, that he doesn't want him to fall. When you find out that the Tales of Passing Say episode, where it's this cheery little happy episode, and he's singing this very cheery song, and then he gets to the end, it's about his son that died in the war, and he found a new son that he could save, because that's what he wanted to do with Zuko. He didn't want to train Zuko to make his brother proud, his Fire Lord Ozai proud, to make Zuko a great warrior, capture he wanted to save him. He wanted to bring him to the light, so he doesn't have to lose another son figure. I know that's not a term that is usually used, but it's just so rich on every level you want to look at it. And I usually say that shows don't need to have like the greatest stories or plot, but as long as the characters are there, the long-term storytelling holds up. Like Supernatural, I love Supernatural. It's just adventures with those two brothers, and I want to hang out with them. But Avatar works on the two levels. It's the characters, it's the lore, it's the mythology, and it tackles all these different philosophies and creeds to life that I think are very important for kids watching growing up, because I know I watched it for the first time around 2010, then around 2016 or 17 I rewatched it again, and I took different things from it, and I know I'm going to get hyped to rewatch it again, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to take different things from it this third time I watch it. So it's just an incredibly rich show.
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, you guys represented exactly my thoughts on how I feel about the show as well. To say that I love the show is an understatement. I fucking love the show. Okay? I love it. I freaking love the show.
Do you also love that censor button?
Yes. In case you guys don't know, I have a Go XLR right beside me. That's how I was able to do that.
That's awesome.
Oh man, I watched the show when I was young, when I was really young, probably like when I was in elementary school, I think. I don't know when the show came out, but I think it was during that time or middle school when I watched the show. But I watched it with my cousin. He introduced it to me, and he introduces me to a lot of things when I was young. But when I saw the show, I thought a lot of the comedy, because I was always so energetic about like things that make me laugh. And all of the comedy really did get to me, like especially Sokka. I think that he's one of the funniest characters on there. And Uncle Iro.
Sokka. Like that was the character I related to. I'm Sokka.
And Uncle Iro, he also made things like very exciting. And Aang, like he's pretty much a comical person. I wouldn't say that he's like hilarious or like straight up like a joker. He's kind of, they usually call him like a prankster. I wouldn't say like he's like
a kid. He's 12.
Yeah, but he's a prankster. But when I grew up a lot more often and rewatched the show again and again, I just realized how depth-defying the storytelling is. Like Zuko's character arc, it's just like one of the best story arcs that I've ever watched in my entire life. Uncle Iro, I would put him on the pedestal as one of the most wisest characters out there. Like I would put him up there with like Yoda or other type of characters that are elderly and wise as well. I would put Uncle Iro up there as well.
Absolutely.
this show is just so good at talking about redemption in a very realistic way, especially for a kid show, a Nickelodeon show, by
Yes.
the way. Like Nickelodeon shows that show SpongeBob or Jimmy Neutron, but they would have stuff like Avatar: The Last Airbender, something like this mature and this. It's just so good. There's just no other words to say it except that it's just this fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Speaking of Nickelodeon, it's not as good, but if you guys never saw the 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Nickelodeon show, it's really good.
You are the second person who's told me I need to watch that.
The designs are off-putting like at first because they're like very square and whatnot. And when I started the show, I watched it as it came out, so I couldn't binge it. But now you guys can, which is awesome. The designs are very off-putting, but it's so good. Like the story arcs that you get into and the growth of the characters. Like it's not just random adventures; they're always the same, and they look the same, like the '80s one, which we all have nostalgia for. I know.
Yes, I love the '80s.
But that 2012 one that started in 2012 is really great. So if you've never seen it, I fully recommend it.
I'll have to go check that
out. Question. Is this the one that has the theme intro where it says like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Ren and Chris? Is that the one?
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
That's the only Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles content I've ever seen. I have not seen the movies. I've not seen the original show. I've not seen comics. That's the only TMNT
1990 movie. That 1990 movie holds up. Like it is good stuff. Like the plot, the story.
And the second one with Sam Rockwell. Sam Rockwell is in that second one.
I've heard of this. Well, actually, here's the thing. I have like a VHS tape apparently of like that says the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I've never watched it. It's not mine, but I do have it. And when I opened up the case, it says Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. And that one was actually the worst one.
No.
No. Turtles through time? Yeah, Turtles through time. Don't.
That one was not fantastic. But
I heard that. Yeah, that's what I heard. I heard that one was actually not.
Well, everything went downhill, including the quality of the puppetry. You go into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the movie, the one that came out in 1990. That is Jim Henson. That's Jim Henson work. That's Jim Henson costuming, and it's brilliant. Like it looks great. You get to the second one, it still looks good, but the quality's going down. The third one, they went with like the non-brand version of Jim Henson, and it shows. It is terrible.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's rough.
The Kirkland brand of Jim Henson. I don't know. It was awful.
Back to Avatar.
Yeah.
Anyway, there are like some other things I want to talk about with Avatar that are concerning with other that's related to the show, but it's actually talking about like creating other content. There is said to be there's a live action show that's being made with Netflix that was supposed to be from the original creators that did Avatar: The Last Airbender, but now they're not being a part of that. I'm a little worried about that. That's a part of the hot takes stuff that I wanted to mention in this podcast, so I figured that maybe it'd be in touch with the theme of this podcast, but I don't know what to think of this since like the original creators were a part of the show and they wanted to do a live action version. I don't even know if I even wanted like a live action show of Avatar: The Last Airbender, in my opinion. I think it's like...
I don't know why you would try to remake Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah, because that's the exact reason why I didn't know why they would do that, since we already have an awesome one, and it's like the same feelings that I have with the Last of Us HBO show. Like, the game is awesome. The game is so good, but since they're making like a live action show, why would you go ahead and remake it since everything else is already perfect? Yeah. I mean, maybe you could do that since you have like the Last of Us 2 game, and that one is a little bit more divisive, and maybe they'll change it up a little bit with like what's happening at the beginning in the last one. But I don't know. There's not really much you could do with Avatar: The Last Airbender in terms of like changes to see if it can be better or things that would make it like stay the same, and it's just like, oh, it's just the original. I'll just go back and watch the original.
See, that's why I didn't like the idea of the live action show, because when I heard they were doing something live action, it was like, oh, cool. Because in my head, I'm thinking it'd be cool if you did a sequel series. And I know that Avatar does have a sequel series. It's just not as good, and I couldn't finish it. But like if they did an in-between series where you got to see Aang as an adult, like if they did like a live action show where it's their own thing, not remaking the animated series, but let's explore Aang's life as an adult. what was that like for him to be the Avatar? What was that like for him finding love and being married and having the children that he had that went on into that show sequel? Like, what was that like? Kind of like what we're doing with Superman and Lois right now. Like, you're seeing Superman be Superman, but now you're seeing Superman married and with kids. And it's this aspect of Superman's life that we've never, ever seen before. And it's a really interesting show because you don't entirely know where it's going. That is what I'd rather see. If Netflix is doing a live action Avatar, do that. Show that part of Aang's life that we have not seen. And you could do something unique. You could do something original. And you're not destroying what has come before it. You're not trying to remake that. You're just doing a follow-up and you're exploring a different side. Like, I would rather that. So the fact that it's a remake of the animated series, I mean, I'll probably check it out, but I'm not excited about it.
Yeah. What do you think, Ren?
I want to point out personally, to me, I think it's a little bit different when it comes to adapting The Last of Us, because on Avatar, I fully get, because it's a narrative and we're adapting to another narrative, because animation is not a genre, it's a medium and all that sort of stuff. Last of Us, it's a game. It's an interactive experience that has such a strong narrative to it. It can really work as a show, not as a movie, but as a show. And HBO having their hands on it, I think it's a really good sign, personally.
Okay, fair enough.
I think it's kind of a wish fulfillment thing where you see Avatar, like, could we ever do this in live action? And I think that's interesting to tackle it in that way. But now, if you can do that in live action, if you can make it look good, if you can present the characters that I look at them and I believe that, okay, there are these characters put into live action, but now make the show actually good. I think that's interesting. It's an interesting creative endeavor to go on. And whatever changes they do to it, I think naturally from an animation medium to a live action medium, you have to change a few things. And they can now expand on a few more things, because Nickelodeon obviously is not going to let an animated show, or any network for that matter, is not going to let an animated show go for beyond 20 minutes per episode, apart from the recent Invincible on Amazon Prime, which I've always wanted an animated show to go beyond 20 minutes, and we finally got it.
Yes.
I see it as kind of the same thing, like when I was a kid, and this is a hot take, so I'm in the right podcast to talk about it. When I was a kid, I saw the Disney movies, and I'm like, I want to see this in live action, and I want to see this in live action, and we've gotten some that should probably be at least attempted to live action, and a few others that not so much. Aristocats, that I love, by the way. But yeah, I think it's an interesting endeavor. And the casting for Uncle Iro, I might add, perfect. Most of the casting has been great so far, but particularly Uncle Iro. But I think it's interesting. I'm willing to give it a shot, and I'm actually happy. I would be more excited if the creators were still there, but I'm actually excited that we have new voices behind this show.
That's an interesting take, since, like, with the, like, Disney live action stuff, it depends on whether or not you like live action versions or not. For me, with Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think it's just, well, I think self-evidently, I'm not going to say the live action version is better than the animated one, but to ask the question, like, can you do this in live action? Sure, that's a good thing to test out and see if it can work, and things are going to have to change. But the thing is that the stuff that probably is what made me really like it, or some of the stuff that didn't make me really like it, is the fact that because it is animated. And I think if it is done in live action, then, and you cannot necessarily do that, or it isn't, or if you do try it and it isn't necessarily as good as it was in the show, then it feels pointless to try and do that from the beginning. So, I don't know. It's like, I guess it's just like a perspective type of deal. Like, it just depends on whether or not you like with where they're going, or you're satisfied, or just think like, this is fair enough, and I don't necessarily, I'm not that bothered by it. But that's the way that I see it, at least when it comes to, like, this live action show.
See, I feel like I've been scarred because, first off, you have the Avatar movie, where they tried to take the first season and make that into a film, but of course you have to condense that and you ruin everything.
90 minutes, not even 2 hours, by the way.
Oh yeah, no.
You can't even make it work in a movie. Like, it's
No.
impossible to make it work in a movie.
But the other thing is, look at Lion King. Like, that animated movie is brilliant, and the live action movie was completely unnecessary, because other than a few extra scenes they threw in there and a few important scenes they cut out, it was this shot for shot remake, and it's like, that's just not even necessary. And so, like, I have these things in the past that kind of scar me. And I'm just like, okay, yes, I will watch it when Netflix has it up, because I really like Avatar and I want to see what they're going to do. But I'm also kind of nervous because, I mean, and a lot of it's not even based on Avatar. A lot of it is just based on what I've seen in the past when they convert Disney animated movies into live action. Like, The Jungle Book was great. It was a great conversion, in my opinion, from animated movie to live action. Lion King, same director, same everything. Horrible conversion from animated to live action. And then you have the Avatar movie, and that makes me nervous. So those kind of things make me nervous. If you want to take the core show that is brilliant, the core narrative that is brilliant, and you want to bring that to live action, man, you must have some ambition and you must have vision that I don't have, because that's a nerve-wracking thing, especially with such a beloved show. That's where my thoughts are, and that's why I'm nervous, because of that past and that history. So, like, I would rather explore a different part of Aang's life.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think I'm coming. So I'm also scarred by the Avatar movie. Obviously, I've been scarred by many adaptations of cartoons into film. But I also have the, again, hot take that I like most of the Disney live action ones. Jungle Book is great. I think Cinderella is wonderful, better than the original. Pete's Dragon, better than the original.
Pete's Dragon was better than the original.
Yeah.
Sure.
I adore.
I have a hot take on that.
Ooh, I adore Cruella last
original.
year. Oh, I like the original. I don't mind it. It's fun.
Well,
it's a product of its time.
The live action version.
Oh yeah. Okay. It's definitely a product of its time, and more ingenious also, with the whole animated character in live action, but that was done in the 60s. That's what's impressive about it. 60s, 50s, something like that. Cruella, I adore. So I think I come that throughout the years, as because Avatar at this point is 12 years old, I think, unless I'm miscounting the years. The movie, that is. And I think nowadays they've realized, okay, we shouldn't do this as a movie. We should do this as a TV show. Again, the long-term storytelling that these characters and their arcs need. And I think Netflix, if we're talking reputation of these adaptations, Netflix as a creator of shows and TV, on the TV show standpoint, not so much their movies, but on a TV show standpoint, they have a really solid, consistent track record, I think.
Yeah. Well, they did a great job with a series of unfortunate events. Like, I don't know if you guys read those books, but I read them. And even when they made changes in the show from the book, they were so true to the spirit of the books that the changes I hardly noticed, because it was just true to the style, the heart, and soul of the book. Same thing with Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. Like, I grew up on that 1980s.
Still gotta watch that
movie. Oh, it's weird.
I love the movie. And I still haven't watched it.
But Age of Resistance is brilliant. It's a great prequel show. I cannot believe it got canceled. It's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard, because it's just put together so well. So Netflix has had a pretty good track record with things like that for me too. So yeah, it's kind of like a little back and forth. I'm just still nervous, because I just really liked Avatar as it is. And it's hard for me to imagine. It's like, I don't know what you could do better in the live action, just because the story has already been told. Zuko's character arc is already one of the best. So you're just going to do it again just to do it in live action. But it's already done so incredibly well over here in the animated.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Speaking of movie, there is one other thing that I want to talk about. It's relating, according to the sources that I've read, they said that they're in the original creators are in the works of not just trying to do a new Avatar show, but they're also in the works in creating a theatrical Avatar movie. That's an animated movie. Yeah. And
wait, the other thing movie?
Yeah, an animated movie, but the
But
thing that has me a little concerned is that it's supposed to be in CG. It's not going to be in 2D animated. It's supposed to be in CG, and
Interesting.
I
can't even picture that.
Yeah, because the thing about that is, could you make it work? Maybe. You can probably make it less distracting, but the fact that, and I don't know if it's like an animated movie where it's about like Aang and the gang, like, Aang and Katara, or if it's like a different other Avatar characters. Like, I haven't seen any sources that said
it's
was.
them. I want it to be like an adaptation of The Search and The Promise into movies, because supposedly it's going to be them immediately after the original show.
Okay, but
that would be a good take to do. Like,
it would.
Even if they did live action, that would be good.
I can't verify this, but I think there was supposed to be a moment where they said that they were supposed to do a movie of The Search and The Promise, but they didn't, and instead done the Korra show. That's what I heard. But
I haven't heard that.
Korra was interesting. I just couldn't finish it. It wasn't as good as the original.
Yeah,
it's not. I like Korra more than most, actually. That last season, where it's basically her fighting a Nazi, is great. Nice. Voiced by the daughter of Robin Williams.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yeah, she plays Kuvira. I'd say give it another chance because I really enjoy it. But I don't like the whole CG animation angle. I do kind of get it, because now in America everything has changed. Like there's really not much 2D animation done anymore. It's a little bit of a side note, but it bothers me more, for example, with the new Dragon Ball movie that they're making, that they're doing it in CG, and that's a weird choice, because it's always been 2D. They still do a lot of 2D in Japan. Everything anime is still 2D, and now they're doing that one in 3D. This one I kind of get, but like you said, Chandler, it's a little bit worrying. How's that style of Avatar that is so unique and is so much of what we like about the visuals of the show, the visuals of how the characters look and the world looks, how is that gonna look in 3D? That, because it's like the Tangled series was the reverse, where we got the 3D movie and then the show was done in that weird, very unique, very well drawn, very well animated style of 2D that is so contrasting to that. I couldn't get into it because I identify so much of Tangled with that movie. I couldn't get into this show, and I'm afraid I just can't. Like, I need to see it because I can't put into my head how that in 3D is going to translate and is going to look.
Yeah, because I can't. I wouldn't say like it would look bad. You can make it bad, because there have been some bad CG animated stuff. But
if I was to draw it, it would look very bad.
But there is a way for you to make it look good, just not like when you're watching Avatar. It's still going to look weird, though.
Yeah.
Because you're used towards the ethnicity and the type of the authenticity of what the show has been, in terms of what it looks like. That's what you're used to looking at. And when you take that away and then turn it into like into a 3D model, it's weird. And I don't know.
Yeah, I can't even picture it. I don't even have an opinion on it. It's like I can't picture it at all. Like, I'm just if you're gonna animate it, then animate it the way it is on the show. Like, that's like its identity as an animation.
The thing, you can make it look good, but it means that you're still taking some things away that does make it charming or likable from the show. It's like you're taking that away from what made us like the show, to be honest, a little bit.
There's going to be a disconnect.
As nice as I can, but it's a disconnect.
Yeah, because if it's the same characters, like immediately after that magnificent finale, which is most people's favorite episode, including mine, even though we're cheating because it's 4 episodes. But immediately after that, and then there's this twist in the visuals, and you just can't picture it. Like, even in the graphic novels, they look exactly the same. They don't move, but it's exactly the same because, again, it's hand-drawn. It's that 2D visual look style to it. Yeah. And again, it's just a type of animation that to this day we haven't seen how they put it into 2D, because a ton of other styles, like we've seen it, like even that 2012 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle show I talked about, there have been graphic novels and comics of that, so we've seen how they look like hand drawn. Like this, I don't know. It's not even, the weirdest part is not even how they're gonna look; it's how they're gonna move, how the show gonna be visually.
Yes, and that's one of the fun things about the show, like the way they move and how they're animated. It works as a 2D animated show, and if you see that in like CG, it's just awkward.
Yeah.
I can't even picture it. Like I don't even know what else to say. It's like my mind cannot wrap around that idea.
Because there's no reference yet. We have nothing to tell us how just. There's no. I can't dream of it. I can't imagine it. Nothing.
And maybe one of the reasons why they're going for CG, I can't verify this again, but maybe it's because drawn hand animation is a lot more, it takes a lot longer to do than CG, probably. Right. Maybe that's why they're wanting to get this out a lot faster, and they want the hype to get there, and they want it to get out a lot quicker. That's probably the reason why they're doing it in that type of animation, but it's like, it's kind of a lose-lose situation if you're not doing it the way that we used to like seeing it.
Yeah.
There is, but I think it can look good, because there's actually a movie that I love, came out recently, and it's 3D, and the 3D of it looks great, but actually has a ton of visual similarities to Avatar, and that is last year's Raya and the Last Dragon. Because in a lot of ways, it's very reminiscent. Yep. So the disconnect is there. The distrust in how it's going to translate from 2D to 3D is there, but can it look good, which is a lot of what we're discussing here. It can look good after at least that initial really does this work, and what, like after that I think it can look great with the action, because the action on that was so fluid. That was one of my favorite movies last year.
That's a really good point. Like it really can work. It's just hard to get past what we know.
Exactly.
That's a perfect way to put it. We know it.
Yeah.
Anyways, let's go ahead and talk. Oh, you gonna say something, Ren?
I was gonna say, like, on the long run, if the stories are good,
yes,
after that initial shock, I think we can easily look past it. If the stories are good, if the meat is good.
Yeah, if the meat's good. If it's bad and it's disgusting, just spit it out.
Exactly.
Okay, so moving on towards the Book of Boba Fett. This show was a little disappointing for me. Actually, for me, honestly, I wouldn't say that. I was one of the few people that liked the first two impressions of the first two episodes of what happened in the show, to be honest. And I was a little bit on the defending side, but when I saw the last three episodes, and as the show continued onward, and even like after like those last three episodes, which are spoiler alert, we're going to do spoilers in here, where they're not talking about Boba Fett, they're talking about Mandalorian.
He has a cameo in one of them.
Yeah. You got the cameo. I started to
realize where he looks to the side and nods.
I started to realize the problem that the show has, and it made me realize, okay, so there are some things that the show could have been better, and I don't know. I'm just gonna go ahead and start off with Ren. What did you think about the Book of Boba Fett?
I think it has so many ideas that feel scattered. Like there are certain ideas that don't connect. So since we're talking spoilers, like I wasn't enjoying how the most of the episodes at the beginning, like those first 4 episodes, they have a flashback singular, because the bulk of the show was flashback. It wasn't moving the story forward. So I finished that first, because you go into the show, and I'm looking at this as a writer myself. I'm looking at this from a story structure. And in that first episode, I go into the show, I know, okay, the premise is Boba Fett comes to Tatooine, and he wants to become the new crime lord, like Jabba was. Mm-hmm. And by the end of the episode, that's still all I knew. There was nothing presented or nothing forwarded in that first episode that I didn't know at minute 0 and 0 seconds that I didn't know at minute 39 and whatever seconds. And then the second episode, the flashbacks are more interesting, but at the core of it, we're still going back.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kill the Tusken Raiders, and I'm like, oh, okay. Because then by that point you start to realize, okay, Boba Fett is going to need an army to fight at the time we thought the Hutts. Okay, he's going to need an army, and then they kill the Tuskens. Oh, okay, I thought we were building them up to come back because they're Boba's family and whatnot. Then episode 3 was the one at first I liked the most because it wasn't very good, but at that point I was desperately asking for the bare minimum, and that was spend most of the time in the present advancing the story, and that's what they did in episode 3. And it wasn't very good, but it was the bare minimum of what I wanted from the show. And then episode 4 is just going back again. And then, like you said, you come to episode 7 and you have the culmination of everything. And it's like all these ideas that could have connected and made an interesting show, but they don't. The Pikes as antagonists were not well set up. No. Where for most of the show, you think it's that biker gang, to the point where when he kills that biker gang, like, absolutely mercilessly in episode 4, you're like, yeah, fuck yeah, Boba Fett, just completely destroying him. Sorry. But then, it turns out it was the Pikes. Like, if we had known that as an audience, if we in episode 2 had seen not even the Pikes, but Cad Bane as their muscle, killing them without Boba seeing them, and then throughout the rest of the season we're like, oh my god, it was this guy and he killed him, and we know him from Clone Wars, so that's the borrowed knowledge that already helped them going in. But he shows up in one episode, he shoots the Marshal, where he clearly left him alive, but then they said he was dead, but then, oh no, he's going to be alive because the guy who does the robot things are going to it's going back alive. I just said in my podcast, and I realized everyone in Star Wars dies twice. So the first time they die, they won't be dead, but then the second time they die.
You can bring back Palpatine. I mean, if you could bring back that dude, how in the world can you say anybody died?
Han died twice. He died in the Carbonites, he came back, and then he died. Leia died in The Last Jedi, and then she came back, and she died in Rise of Skywalker. Luke died in Empire Strikes Back when he fell, but he survived, so he died in The Last Jedi. Wow. The pattern! Boba Fett! He's about to die a second time at any point. But yeah, it's a ton, like, the Pikes were not an interesting villain, were not a compelling antagonist, because for they all look the same. I don't know the difference between Pikes, and he doesn't ever interact with Boba Fett. Like, we don't even get the satisfying payoff of Boba Fett killing the Pike and the Mayor. It's Fennec who does it as almost an afterthought after everything is taken care of. Like, the history that Cad Bane and Boba Fett have, because Cad Bane was trained by Django and all that. You don't even feel any of that in their first conversation in the finale.
No, I just forgot.
Yeah, I was like, is the fact that they know each other still canon? Well, what is it? And then the second conversation, okay, you feel that weight, you feel that tension, and then Cad Bane is better, but then you brought him back just to kill him in the next episode. Okay, that's a choice. Like, there are cool moments. The episode 5, The Return of the Mandalorian, it's an absolutely fabulous episode of television that they pick up all these ideas from the previous show, from his arc so far, and they connect it to what is going on in this episode. The episode 6 is a little bit of member berries, but they're still telling a cohesive story of elements that eventually connect to Boba Fett. The finale has a ton of cool moments. Mando and Boba fighting in their jetpacks. Boba Fett, watch out for that sensor. Boba Fett walking in that 3, 2, 1 fucking Rancor. It's so amazing. It's so amazing. When he comes in on the top of the Rancor, I'm like, oh yes. But it's all very surface level. So emotionally, I from beginning to end, I was like, I want to emotionally connect to this, and I cannot. Yeah. I want to feel something, but I cannot. And it feels like, obviously, these shows are completely written and done on a conceptual level before they even come out. But it feels like they were making up for lost time when they introduced all these things that we like and told those stories very well. And even this show ends with Mando and Grogu. Doesn't end with Boba Fett. That's not the last note you leave on. It's, these characters that I like, and I really want to go on this journey with it. That's the thing there. So I know I went on an enormous rant, so I apologize. But
Yeah,
uh,
Durbin, what did you think of the show? Is it the
Well,
same?
I don't have a hot take from Ren at all. Like my take fits very well in a lot of stuff that Ren said. When I was watching it week to week, it was kind of hard because one of the main problems, and I heard another YouTube channel say this, and I went light bulb. That's it. So it's not like this is my original idea, but it fits. It's like what one of my main problem was before we got into Mando and all that stuff, the flashbacks. That's a very interesting story by itself. But if you go back and you look at season 1 and 2 of Arrow, whenever we flash back to the island in Oliver Queen, whatever he's learning in the flashback, we see how he learned it, and now we see it applied in the present episode that we're watching. That's not what it was for this show. With this show, he goes in the tank and he closes his eyes.
oh
And
god,
now almost what we just watched doesn't matter. We're going into another world, a galaxy far, far away, and we're getting the backstory to Boba Fett. And the place where it worked the best was the first episode, because the first episode is great to watch him punch through the freaking Sarlacc pit and come out. So stuff like that to give us that backstory and to fill that gap, it's like, oh, perfect. And then he comes and we're seeing him in Tatooine. We're seeing him be the crime lord. And it's like, okay, that's cool. But like you get into the other episodes and it's like, okay, so these flashbacks aren't really connecting. They're just there to establish he wants a tribe. And the thing that is the most interesting when you think about it, the place where Boba Fett has a character arc is when he's in the tribe with the Sand People. That's why the flashbacks are more interesting than even the show.
Yeah.
Because his character is not arcing in the show. His character is just Boba Fett.
I am Boba Fett.
Yes. And he was way more interesting in Mando season 2 when he just shows up and starts kicking butt. And so it's
When he was basically Space John Wick.
Yes. But where was Space John Wick in this show? There's like a few moments where you see Space John Wick come out, but the first time you really watch him fight in this show, he has to be saved and rush back to the Bacta tank. And it's like, are you serious? I just watched this guy, John Wick, a whole bunch of stormtroopers, and he can't handle these guys because they have red shields? No. No. That is not the Boba Fett that you introduced me to in Mando season 2. And so, as they're trying to build through the flashbacks to the Boba Fett we saw in Mando season 2, we're watching post Mando season 2 guy not be able to handle some people because they got shields. And it's like, this is not my Boba Fett. He should have made Swiss cheese out of these people like it was nothing. He should have cut through them like a hot knife through butter. And instead, they set Finnick as the tough one, and Boba Fett is the not as tough one. But I love Finnick, so I didn't mind her being tough. But Boba Fett. Anyway, so that was kind of my problem with that. And like you said, there is no connection to a villain. And so you meet the cousins of Jabba, those fat, ugly twins. And you're like, okay, this is it. Nope, never mind.
What a red herring.
Yeah.
This
is not it. Oh, and they're leaving now. They're leaving because they're that scared of the Pikes. Well, if they're that scared of the Pikes, why do I not know the Pikes that well? Why have I not spent a lot of time with the Pikes to be as terrified of the Pikes as these fat slugs are, who are the terror of Tatooine? I've seen Clone Wars. You don't mess with the fat slugs, okay? They're fat, they can't move, but they got power. You don't mess with them. I don't have that same thing established with the Pikes, and they didn't take the time to establish that with the Pikes. And so that's kind of what leaves that completely shallow and wanting. But then the show got great when it wasn't about Boba Fett anymore. As soon as Mando came in and we deepened the lore of the Darksaber, that was incredible. Except, how did Moff Gideon wield it with such ease? But anyway, you deepen the lore of the Darksaber and him not working with the destiny of the Darksaber to rule Mandalore, and that Darksaber senses that, and so it becomes a weight instead of a weapon for him to use, and it's like, well, that's incredibly interesting. Then we get into Baby Yoda training with Luke and all the geekness that you get because it is the mirror image of Empire Strikes Back. This is what we waited for the sequels, and it's like, this is amazing. So Boba Fett became the most amazing show ever when it was Mando season 2.5. When as soon as these other characters, and then they would go back to Clone Wars and deepen what Clone Wars established, but carry it over to the sequels. And it's like, that is brilliant. Like, if they take these shows and they fill in the gaps between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy, it might make aspects of the sequel trilogy better. Like, if they could use these shows to explain exactly how Palpatine came back in a compelling way, it could be great. Anyway, the point that I'm getting at is, when it's Boba Fett's show, it's not good. When it's everybody else's show and they deepen Star Wars lore, it's amazing. Cad Bane was freaking awesome to bring that dude from Clone Wars to real life. Like, that was epic, and more epic than anything they'd done in the show. Like you said, Ren, Cad Bane should have been there in episode 2. Who is Cad Bane working with? Because even if we don't know the Pikes that well, we have an established fear of Cad Bane, and that would have been better than nothing. So, yeah.
I'll try and play devil's advocate a little bit, but it's like some of us are still like, we kind of are on the same page on how we feel about the show. It's just that, I wanted to emphasize like some of the flashbacks that were going on in the beginning of Book of Boba Fett. I like the flashbacks, even though some people would probably find the flashbacks to be, I don't know, somewhat boring or just filler, because it's like, oh, we're going back to here and we're not going over here.
I thought the main storyline was boring and filler, and the flashbacks were more interesting.
Yeah, that was my thought, because I like the idea of seeing Boba Fett's character changing and adding in more growth and more understanding more about what he's learning during his journey between Return of the Jedi and Mandalorian Season 2. That right there would be fascinating to me. Like, where did that come from? Why is he like this? I wanted to see where he learned all of this, and seeing this with the Tusken Raiders, it's an interesting option, I would say.
It's a choice.
It's a specific choice, but you can't really do much with it. The thing is that when he was enslaved and he was being mocked by the Tusken Raiders, I was like, oh my gosh, this is going to be so death-defying. Like, he's like in trouble, and this is like, I'm getting chills just seeing like him being in this type of position. He used to be cool and awesome, and now he's just like being tortured by these other people. But then they all of a sudden decided to change his mind. They changed his mind, and now all of a sudden he's like, you're my family now. Like, you enslaved me, but now you're my family. And I don't know. That turnaround was like a little weird for me. I mean, the way he's able to learn to fight, that's a good option.
That's cool.
But I don't know. Like, it seems like that these writers didn't necessarily know what they were doing when creating the Book of Boba Fett. They were like, no, we have to create a show about Boba Fett, but we don't really know what we're doing. So they try to take in like interesting storylines that could be pretty cool, but just add in a lot more filler that isn't necessarily that great, but we can make it up for that just by showing some sneak previews of Mandalorian and hopefully set up like a show for Mandalorian Season 3 and Ahsoka with their show. The stuff that was with Ahsoka, young Luke Skywalker, and Grogu, that was great. I love seeing that shot. It's like everything being combined all together. And it made me a little bit more excited, and hopefully it's actually good. It made me more excited to see what that Ahsoka show is going to be about, because it's like you can get to tell more legendary stories, but if, again, like, nothing is really going to happen like the Book of Boba Fett, what are we going to do?
Well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, Ahsoka has great potential for so much to happen because of the way Rebels ended. It ended with Ezra and Grand Admiral Thrawn disappearing together with the space whales. Where are they? What has become of them since then? So the setup of Ahsoka and Mando Season 2 was epic. And that's also what made Boba Fett good, was to bring her back, because it like sparks that interest. Like, that's what she's going for next. She's tracking down Grand Admiral Thrawn. And hopefully Ezra's alive. So now I have that hope. Like, we could get another Jedi. We'd have Luke Skywalker, Ezra, and Ahsoka. Like, that would be beyond epic. And so that kind of stuff gives me great hope. I do have a little bit of that fear that Ahsoka could turn into what Boba Fett was, but I don't think so. I feel like Ahsoka has so much rich potential, and I feel like they actually, like you said, Chandler, like, when it comes to Book of Boba Fett, it's like, well, we got to do it because everybody loves this guy, but we don't know what we're doing. I feel like they know what they're doing with Ahsoka. It just feels like the groundwork that they're laying, it feels like they've got a plan for where it's going. I could be 100% wrong, and I hope I'm not.
I hope I'm not reading.
And Ahsoka is going to be a sequel to Rebels. That's how they were like looking at it. This is our sequel to Rebels. So Ezra's cast, Thrawn is cast. They're bringing back Lars Mikkelsen, who voiced him in Rebels. Ezra is going to be played by Mina Massoud from live action Aladdin, which I also like. Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that show, and the fact that the logo has the whole world between worlds things from Rebel is just cannot wait for that. I think I'm after listening to you guys and the fact that we all agree with the issues on Boba Fett. I think what Chris brought up with the whole flashbacks of Arrow really highlight what the issues were with the flashbacks of Boba Fett. Because again, in concept, they're interesting. What is going on is interesting, but after seeing episode 1. And then you see episode 2. And then 3 fully confirms it. I'm like, okay, interesting. How is it connecting to the present?
Yep.
And it wasn't. In Arrow, not only was it half and half, it wasn't a giant 40-minute block of flashback with 2 minutes of present time at the beginning and the end, like Boba Fett. Arrow was setup, build up, and payoff. Like immediately, every episode, pow, 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 like strike. Boba Fett had nothing of that. Like on episode 4, you were still asking, how is the flashback connected? Why are we telling? I just found no interest in that story because I felt I saw no reason to be telling that story.
Yeah,
because like that was my problem. That was my problem. Wasn't inherently that we're going back, even though I was a little bit trepidatious. Not that interesting because I know up until that point Boba Fett survives.
Yeah,
but why are we telling that story? Yeah, and they never gave us a reason.
Yeah, episode 4 was definitely the one that confirmed it for me because it's like we know they're gonna get out okay, so why show them that they're probably gonna get sucked in back into that rank or pit? Like it's
him running around the kitchen to catch the rabbit. I'm like, oh Jesus, what? Why? That was the episode that at the time I was like, I'm out. I'm not reviewing this show anymore until the finale. And then the next week it becomes a completely different show.
I actually don't even remember episode 4. So I started to watch the show a second time and binged the first 3 episodes back to back. And it's a little bit better on the binge. Like when you can watch all of the episodes back to back, it still has all the problems we talked about. It's not like they go away, but the pace at least feels faster. And I didn't quite get to episode 4. And
episode 4 is about him getting the ship back. But you're like, I wonder if he's getting the ship back. Yeah.
But you see, I already forgot, right?
Yeah.
Because it was just that forgettable, and I watched it recently.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing is that with those flashbacks, you're focusing, you have stories that actually are neat, and they can be useful, but one, it seems like that they don't know if that's the primary focus that they're wanting to use for the show because you're also focusing on the present timeline. In the present timeline, you're not really doing anything. You're just saying that Boba Fett, he's doing stuff. Something's going on with the Pikes. Something's going on with the Hutts. There's also Kristan. Like he's a pretty cool character.
Yes.
But again, like what's going on with him? It just seems like that they put him in here and now he's with Boba Fett. So
yeah. When he immediately lets him go only to in the next episode without anything in between going, hey, you want to work for me?
Yeah. It's like you got some interesting stuff in here, but now they're like just lingering onward towards other things, thinking that they're captivating, they're trying to mesmerize us and thinking that they're creating something that would be captivating. But in the long run, they're not really doing anything that interesting. They're just going from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And that's basically it.
Yeah, and that really is all that show is. Whereas Mandalorian is not a point A to point B. It's not trying, the goal is not to bridge this gap between the originals and the sequels. It is to tell this incredibly deep and fascinating story. And they're adding to the mythology of Star Wars by building the story and drawing upon what has been done. And it's so good. And Book of Boba Fett was like, oh, yeah, we should probably tell you how we got out of the Sarlacc pit. Oh, yeah.
No, I'm not interested.
Yeah. Raised by sand people. And that's where he, got some of these new fighting skills. And I was like, did he need new fighting skills? He was the most feared bounty hunter.
Exactly. I also, what was I going to say that when he, when he's running around with the ship with trying to find the rabbit on the fourth episode around the kitchen. I'm like, how the mighty have fallen. Which, by the way, when at one point the Bactus thing became the joke, where every time you see the shot of the Bactus, you're like, oh, okay, here we go, flashbacks. And then at the end of the show, where you're going to a post-credit scene, you're like, ooh, post-credit scene, and it's a shot of the Bactus tank. I'm like, no, not again.
But it's funny. I was like, wait, who's in that? Oh, it's the Marshal. Well, I guess that's no surprise.
Yeah. Which is so weird how they decide to go about that. Like, he's clearly alive when Cad Bane shoots him, because he only shot him once and then shot the other guy 75,000 times. He even leaves off with a message, like, he's clearly talking to the Marshal, like, Tatooine belongs to the Syndicate, so stay down. But then the people show up and they're like, oh, we're here to avenge the Marshal. I'm like, oh, so he's dead. And then, no, he's alive. He's going to get fixed by the robot guy.
Oh, man.
The other thing that I just found really weird, or what turned me off from, at least within the present timeline, was like these cyborgs. I don't know what they're called, but they're people that are half human, half robots.
Espa Vespas.
They're what?
The Mos Espa Vespas.
Yes. Oh,
those guys, they don't look like that they fit in the Star Wars universe at all.
No, they feel like they fit in Power Rangers or Voltron with the bright collars of their Vespas. You know, it's like, okay, you're the Red Ranger, you're the Green Ranger, you're the Yellow Ranger.
A female Red Ranger, yes.
Yes. Are we going to watch your bikes combine and make the Mega Droid?
I was expecting them to combine and make a giant Boba Fett at the end.
Yes.
I'm wondering if they're legitimately trying to tie in the Last Jedi characters with these characters and say, this is how everything was created.
Yeah,
because
probably.
These characters look like they're super similar with the Last Jedi. Like, what was that place where Rose and Finn were like with these rich characters and their mustache-twirling villains? I don't know what they're called.
Canto Bite.
Canto Bite. Yeah, that's what they are. They look like they belong in that world.
Yeah,
true. A little bit. But it was... I don't like. Here's what I liked about that biker gang. I don't know what to call them. What I liked about it is it's like, okay, you're trying to build off of the flashbacks. He learned what it meant to live in a tribe. He learned what it meant not to be a bounty hunter, just working from gig to gig and working with bad people. He wants to be a leader and he wants to build a tribe around him because he wants to be in a tribe. So I liked how they bring in the new Wookiee. I like how they bring in the biker gang. I like the concept. We're building a tribe. Okay, you're making the flashbacks a little bit more worth it. But then you have this high-speed chase with the Power Ranger Vespas. But that high-speed chase was so slow. Like, they were driving really slow for a high-speed chase. So I felt no excitement, no adrenaline. And all I'm thinking of is, why are those collars so bright when you live on Tatooine, such a poor planet? Like, I'm not understanding this. And, like, there's something about it that made them stick out like a sore thumb, where it's like, I like the concept, building a tribe. I don't think I'm liking this execution. There is something about these characters that is not working for me.
Yeah. I don't mind them too much, but it's one of those things that when you remember that the director for most of the show, and particularly that episode, if I'm not mistaken, is Robert Rodriguez, it's one of those things that almost doesn't need explanation. You're like, oh, yeah, that makes sense.
These characters look like they belong in a lead-up Battle Angel, if I were to be honest.
It's Spy Kids.
Yeah.
Like, have you guys seen the gallery episodes where it's the round table of the directors of Mandalorian talking about it? Yes. Like, at one point, Jon Favreau says, like, this is so cool for us as fans because it feels like we're playing with our favorite toys.
Yep.
Boba Fett as a show, it feels literally like it's just, hey, the toys are all here and I'm bringing in these other toys. And okay, but what's the story? Doesn't matter. It's all the toys and I'm playing with them.
This is the weird thing. I don't know if you guys can explain this, but like, wasn't there like a meeting with everyone that was supposed to help out take down the Pikes? That Boba Fett called all these people. They look like they betrayed him in the end, but they said like, I know that you guys could probably betray me, but be respectful, okay? Like, why?
It was so weird. Like, I didn't really. I guess I didn't feel the betrayal. Like, even when you had the biker gang calling, "This doesn't feel right," and the people turn on him, I was like, I guess I'm not sure what's going on here.
Yeah,
it seems obvious. Like, they can just betray them.
It goes back to the issue of the antagonists not being well established, to the point where even in that first reunion, where they're meeting, I was completely lost because we had never seen those people before. We don't know what the power dynamics are. We don't know have they said no to Boba Fett before, and is this a last resort that he's calling them over? And he's like, "Oh, I don't intend to rule by fear, but by respect." And when they say no, here comes the Rancor. Okay, you want a little bit of fear at least.
Yes.
And so when they say, okay, yeah, there was absolutely no tension there. I don't understand how these people are in any way more powerful or less powerful for that matter than Boba Fett. I don't know what kind of army they have. I don't know what kind of relationship with the Pikes they have. So I don't know why they're agreeing or disagreeing with this. So when he says, oh, if the Pikes ask you to betray me, just stay out of it. I'm like, but why not say, if the Pikes ask you to betray me, just say no and stick with me? Why isn't that the deal? So then when it comes to the betrayal, not only can you see it coming a mile away, but it's so weird because, like, Chrysanthemum, he gets overpowered, which I absolutely don't buy, because he had the Mos Espa Vespas, he had Boba Fett, and he kicked all their butts until they had to resort to throwing them out down the vent to the Rancor pit. Overpowered by Trandoshans, really? I don't think so. And the Mos Espa Vespas are the only ones who get... They don't even kill anyone. They're just cornered until Ming-Na Wen, the awesome Ming-Na Wen, comes in and just kicks their butt and kills them off. And then Chrysanthemum somehow gets off screen, which is so incredibly satisfying. And he's just there. It's all these ideas that they get from point A to point D. Not even B. They don't have the journey for these characters. They just have, okay, we need to have this point, and then we need to have this point. So they just have the points. They have the key beats of the story, but they don't have the connecting thread between it.
And see, you talk about seeing the betrayal a mile away.
Yeah.
And by the time it got to it, I was so uninterested in whatever was going on with, Boba Fett and the leaders. I was just like, oh, I guess more people are shooting at them. Like, that's where my mind went. I didn't go, oh, a betrayal. I didn't have that moment. And I didn't have a moment where I was like, oh, I could see that coming a mile away. I just went, oh, look, we just added more people shooting at the supposed good guys.
Yep. Yeah. That's exactly my thoughts. The other thing that this is just a rabbit trail, but I'm going to say it anyway because I kind of want to wrap this up. But the thing with the Mandalorian and Grogu, there's something within that I don't buy. You can tell me that, like, Grogu can actually learn the Force and he can do, like, all these flips and jump and all that other stuff. I'm fine with that. What I don't buy is this little baby Yoda can fly an X-Wing all the way back down.
No, it was R2-D2. They established that it was R2-D2.
I don't know. Okay, so you know what?
She's saying, she's playfully saying, "How did you fly this?" And then the droids say, "It was the astromech." And she's like, "I know an astromech flew this."
Okay, so I didn't pay attention to that. So
that's I will say, look, I didn't want Luke to be present in that final battle because otherwise it would be a 5-minute episode where Luke just does this and everyone is killed. But I do wish there was a bit more of a narrative reason why it at least didn't go like, hey, Mando, here's the baby, okay? Because if...
Oh, no. It's the Force. They want us to like the show. What is that?
What the...
That is quite a sound.
Sorry.
Oh my god.
Talk about Star Wars.
Sorry.
It's a glitch in the Matrix before we start talking about the Matrix.
Oh, what a transition.
The Matrix knows what we're about to say, or at least what I'm about to say. But
I'm going to leave the studio and then I'm coming back in.
I don't even know. Oh, I wish there was a narrative reason why Luke didn't go, because let's imagine that the R2 gets in trouble. He can't save Baby Yoda.
I know. It would have been great. Like, yeah, you're right. Luke could have just ended it in 2 seconds, right? But at the same time, like, it would have made sense if Luke was there to give the handoff, give us this emotional payoff, and maybe we could see some emotion. Well, we can't because it's a CGI face, but experience some emotion with Luke of the fact that this was supposed to be his first student, and his first student chose an attachment over the Jedi way, which, if you want to connect these shows, filling in the gap to the sequels to give the sequels more depth, this could be the beginning of Luke's disillusionment, right? The fact that his very first student chose Mando over learning to become a Jedi.
Oh my gosh.
Oh no,
Yeah,
it's the glitch in the
I'm
Matrix.
still in the Matrix.
Whoa. This is creepy. I love this. Like
I love it. This is amazing.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a little bit better than how Boba Fett ended. It's pretty cool.
Oh.
Whoa.
Oh my god.
The evil laugh. That's so
This is awesome. Yeah.
I'll try it again, guys. Sorry.
No problem.
But this is fun.
Yeah. But how awesome was it though that Baby Yoda puts the Rancor to sleep and then comes up and snuggles right next to him?
Yeah. Oh, everything with Baby Yoda is adorable. I melt watching it. But I love that it wasn't like violence. It wasn't throwing him off. He used the pacifist Jedi way, which we know Luke to be a very big defender of.
Yes.
Back.
Welcome back.
He's back.
Hopefully it'll be okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah, I don't know why, but my capture card probably messes up a good bit. I think I'll say like this one final note, and then I think we'll move on towards the Matrix, as that would be an interesting segue.
You already are there. You're already there.
But anyway, I want to talk about like Grogu and Din Djarin, like Mandalorian, for a second. I like the story that they're building up with these two, where Din Djarin and the Darksaber, where he's no longer becoming a Mandalorian and he's becoming something else. And the same is happening with Grogu, where he would have to become a Jedi, but he isn't choosing to be a Jedi. And their connection between like Din Djarin and Grogu is actually growing stronger. And that relationship can actually build up towards... I don't know if this is like... I don't know, because that's like... Since you said, Ren, like Ahsoka is a build-up... it's a sequel towards Star Wars Rebels, yeah. But I wish, like, if they did do something with like those two characters and Ahsoka, like with that show, and journey onward to like another type of storytelling, I would really like that. I would really like that if they have something within that kind of something, because there's something about Ahsoka where she actually left the Jedi Order and now it's become something else, and now we have that connection with Din Djarin and Grogu, and they're leaving things that they were choosing to be a part of, but and going onward to like a new journey. That I'm hoping to see something with that.
I think we can see that because not Ahsoka, but Grand Admiral Thrawn. I don't know how much it changed, because there was supposed to be a show called Rangers of the New Republic that is now defunct. It's not going to happen because one of the stars screwed up. So she's gone. I don't know what we're talking about, but supposedly Grand Admiral Thrawn is going to be the big overarching villain connecting all these shows that are happening in the same timeline. So I'm sure at some point, just like the book of Boba Fett just proved it, we can see a lot of crossover between the shows that are concurrent.
Yes, I agree. And I love this build up with Mandalorian season 3, because we got to deal with the Darksaber. We got to deal with the fact that Mando and the Darksaber, they don't have the same mindset. So we got to reconcile that somehow. We got to reconcile. Oh my gosh, I just forgot her name. The awesome Mandalorian girl.
Armor. The armor.
Thank you. I love Bo-Katan. We got to reconcile that. So there's a lot of really interesting things that season 3 could build to. And now we got a head start on it because we already got Grogu and Mando back together, and we don't have to accomplish that. So like season 3 is going to be really interesting, and Ahsoka is going to be interesting. How we build a Grand Admiral Thrawn being our in game.
Yeah. And his episode of the Book of Boba Fett did such a great job at continuing and furthering his arc that we now have a motivation, a bigger motivation, more personal, for him to go to Mandalore. It's not just to reclaim Mandalore. He's now an apostate, and he wants to belong back in his faith. He wants to be a part of his creed again.
Yeah, that's
so
what makes
he
it
needs to go find the waters and whatnot. That's compelling.
This is a good character conflict, because not only does he want to not be an apostate, right? He wants to be a Mandalorian. This is the way. But look how eager he is to remove his helmet just so Grogu could touch his face.
Yes.
And so now you have this inner conflict. Grogu's back. And so, of course, he wants to be able to remove his helmet. Grogu could touch his face, like that kind of deal. At the same time, he doesn't want to be an apostate. He has to go to Mandalore and figure out how to get down underneath and walk the waters, and like that's going to be really interesting.
Exactly that. It's such interesting conflict that The Matrix, for example, doesn't have. There you go.
Right. What a great
What a great segue. Yeah, a lot better than my segue.
I don't know about that. I think yours is like top of the food chain.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that would be so cool if it actually was the segue towards it. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk about The Matrix. I don't know how much more time we have left for you to talk about that, since you have like 90 minutes. You said that you have left. I don't know how much time you have left to be on this podcast, Ren.
I miscalculated, so I have at least a good half an hour left.
Oh, okay.
That works.
So we got a good bit of time left, because at the end we usually talk about like an underrated and overrated film. I don't know if you wanted to go ahead and get that out of the way, and then you could be able to go ahead and do your Matrix talk, or either way.
Underrated. Well, Men of Steel, I've talked about enough with you guys how it's underrated, so I'm going to say another very underrated movie, one of my all-time favorites, Treasure Planet. I adore that film. It's
a great movie.
Disney's original Star Wars before they had Star Wars, and that's one that should have a live-action adaptation. And I want to direct it, so Disney, call me.
Hey, Ren, by the way, you know that like we had like that idea of Jason Momoa being in Fast and the Furious, where he was like Aquaman and stuff like that.
Yes.
Now he actually is in Fast and Furious 10,
and he's gonna be the big bad because he doesn't want to let him in Atlantis.
They stole our idea, Ren. We can actually sue them now. No, we shouldn't.
Kevin Feige is stealing all my ideas for Ant-Man 3. If you go and watch, like I did a podcast a little over a year ago at this point, where I pitched Ant-Man 3, and everything that's come out since then, apart from casting choices, it's basically what I pitched. As of this moment, it might change, so I don't know. Overrated? I don't know. I'm looking at my Funko Pops to give me ideas of overrated stuff. Oh, you know what's overrated? And I just saw someone talking about it on my podcast that I did earlier today. And this is a hot take, so bam, another connection to the show. I think Alita Battle Angel is very overrated. I do not like that movie.
I could agree with you on that. That movie was pretty. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't worth the hype.
I would say that it's got its flaws, at least with the writing, in my opinion. But
Robert Rodriguez again.
I felt like the visuals were pretty good in my.
The visuals were great.
Yeah.
I just thought she was very invincible throughout the whole thing. Like, even when she basically has one arm and just her head, she still wins the fight against that big, gigantic dude. And then at a certain point, she gets what they literally describe as like the most invincible body that cannot be broken. And so the entire film, I just can't connect with that. It's like, okay, she doesn't lose ever.
Yeah.
Right.
I can understand what you're talking about there. Okay, I guess Durbin, do you want to go ahead and do our underrated, overrated, or do you want to wait until the end?
It's hard for me to beat what I already said. My most overrated movie is Pulp Fiction. Like, I hate that movie's terrible.
Wow.
I think that movie is so overrated, and I don't get what people see. But I will go after Ren here, in the same vein of what he said with Treasure Planet as an underrated movie. That Atlantis animated movie. Oh my gosh, that was
Those two always go hand in hand.
Yes, they do. And I recently watched it on Disney Plus. Like, I think I hadn't seen it since I was a kid, so I didn't even remember it. So watching it as a grown up, I was like, that was good.
I'll go ahead and say mine. I just remember this. I had like a different underrated film that I just picked, but since you guys were talking about like animated movies, I actually wanted to talk about one. It's a DreamWorks animated film. The most underrated one is The Prince of Egypt. I hear like a lot of people talking about a lot of people are talking about, like, you know, Shrek, Madagascar, Kung Fu Panda, How to Train Your Dragon. They talk about those films when it comes to DreamWorks. But Prince of Egypt, it's not getting that much mention in it. And the story about Moses, and like an interesting take on, or at least like with somewhat of a creative license of telling the story and their interpretation, it's amazing. I watched it for like the first time ever, and it's so good. At least in terms of like an animated film and voice acting and storytelling, it's really interesting and a really dark story, especially for a DreamWorks animated film. Is it like rated PG or G? I can't remember the rating for it.
I can't remember either, but they tell a dark story and manage to still keep it at that GPG rating. I did a whole video on it on my channel because it's such an interesting movie to dive into.
PG.
It's PG. Yeah, it's PG. But even at that rating, like, if for a PG film in animation, it's so dark. Like, the moment where God comes down and he's taking all the children away is so quiet, no music, and he's silently. Nothing. It's like it's at the same time like peace and calming, but it's terrifying. That's what makes it even more terrifying. Usually you would have music in the background that like winds up or something that would feel intimidated or uncomfortable. But the fact that this one, where you see God and he looks like a calming little shadow and he just takes the breath out of you, it's...
And you're hearing the breath as it's moving through and it's like, oh my God, chills.
Yes.
And I haven't seen Chris's video, so I don't know if he talks about it, but something that always fascinated me in that film that I don't see a ton of people talking about is how it was a very deliberate choice that really works and puts so many things into question, is that God in that movie is voiced by Val Kilmer, who also voices Moses.
Yes.
He's the only person that God talks to, but is that how other people hear God? Their own voice talking to them.
Yes.
I think that's so chilling, but such a great choice.
Because it's God talking directly to the heart. So of course he hears it in his own voice. But Val Kilmer does a good job where when Moses is talking, you know, that's Val Kilmer as Moses. But when God is talking, it's the same voice, but you feel the personality shift. And so as a Christian myself, when you talk about hearing God speaking to you in this still small voice, you do hear it in your own voice, but there's a personality shift. Like it's interesting. And the way it is portrayed in that, to have Val Kilmer voice both, it was unbelievably brilliant.
Yeah, that was really good. I didn't think about that, but glad you brought that up. Damien said Knives Out I didn't think was too good or that special. I disagree with that. I mean, I can understand why some people would probably say Knives Out is a little overrated. Like, oh, they told the story and now it's like, oh, it's who's the villain? Oh, it's pretty obvious who it is. But it's still like the way that they execute it, though, was still really fun for me. I love the execution. And
Knives Out shows that same director who did The Last Jedi learn from his mistakes. Because in The Last Jedi, he made it so subversive that the idea of being subversive became a joke on itself. Like, he so subverted everything that it just became this, to me, it just became this ongoing gag. It's like, oh, let's see what he's going to subvert now. And I feel like he learned his lesson with Knives Out, and the way he used the technique of subversion worked better in Knives Out because he subverted certain expectations of the mystery genre in a good way that refreshed it. Rather than in Star Wars, he's like, I just want to subvert everything. Look, Luke is a jerk now.
I love both those movies. To me, Knives Out specifically was who I was rooting for best screenplay. Not that I'm mad that Parasite won, because Parasite is a phenomenal screenplay. But personally, I was like, Knives Out is my favorite screenplay of that year. And Knives Out is a great example to me of a film that does predictable very well. Because there are two types of... Because I don't think predictability is inherently bad. Obviously, you prefer not to predict a murder mystery or a mystery of any kind. But when you get to the end of Knives Out, you're like, oh, okay, it was Chris Evans. But then you look and you rewatch the film, and it's the only thing that makes sense. It wasn't a twist for the sake of it. It wasn't a reveal for the sake of it. Like Book of Boba Fett, for example, does with it was the Pikes after all.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't care. Like, it's the only thing that makes sense. So of course it's predictable because you can't go any other way. And to me, that's a real great kind of predictable, where the story is clearly so tightly written that was just, you can't poke holes at, not to say you can't poke holes throughout the entire thing, but you can poke holes at the decision of that person was the person that did the thing. So that's really good. Last Jedi is another conversation. I do love The Last Jedi, but yes, Knives Out is great. I agree. I've had this conversation with them and Isian.
I'll just go ahead and move on to like my overrated pick. I know you're gonna hate me for this one, Durbin, because you just said it's your favorite movie of all time. It's Jurassic Park.
No. No, that
No,
changed
wait.
the genre. Oh my gosh, that movie was groundbreaking in 19.
Right behind him. It's right behind him, over his left shoulder.
Yes, look at that.
Oh man, I let me just say this: it's a good movie. I will say this: it's a good movie.
Great movie.
I don't hate it, but when people tell me like, "Oh, this is like one of the best Steven Spielberg films of all time," I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't think it is. I kind of don't think it is. It's
Oh man.
I personally would.
It's hard to say it's the best Steven Spielberg film of all time, but as a film and an adaptation from the novel, which is also quite brilliant, to film, it was done so well. And you're young, Chandler, and I'm going to get white hair. But rewind to 1993 and just think those types of things were all stop motion dinosaurs. Like that's like how things like that were done. It's just it was different back then. But then comes Jurassic Park, and the CGI was so good that to this day, it actually still holds up. So number one, that draws you in and captivates you. And 9-year-old me seeing the sneak preview of Jurassic Park the weekend before it opened, it was mind-blowing. But then number two, on top of it, it had this fascinating story, Chandler. The story being the Garden of Eden. That's what it is. Man trying to be God and define good and evil for themselves. Man thinking that they can control nature and that they are gods above nature. And it turns out that they are not. And so it's like this movie, it's such a fascinating story that is more than just bringing the dinosaurs back.
That stuff I like. That stuff I like. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed what it's talking about, and that aspect of it is pretty good. The thing that I like the actors and I like the characters in here, you know, talking about like how you can't have like dinosaurs and humans coexist at the exact same time, or, you know, try to play God. The thing that I'm bothered by is like when it tries to do the horror aspects of it. And I look at the dinosaurs and I see it's just like, it's intimidating. And if I was in that position, of course I'm going to be scared like crazy. But at other times, especially with the kids, I just know that they're going to get out okay. The other thing with this that I have a little bit of a problem with is that I have a problem, at least at some movies, it's just like, it depends on horror for me. Horror is like subjective. I have a problem with horror movies that linger on with things that a dinosaur just like sneaking around a corner thinking that it's going to be there, and then it turns out, oh, it's probably not there, and then ding, somebody makes a little bit of a noise, and then did somebody do something? And they probably linger around a little bit more, and then they say like, oh, is he over there? Oh, he's probably not over there. And then they're like, oh, and then they say and just
that was great.
Like, did it sound goofy or did it sound
it was
intimidating?
It was good. It was good.
Okay, I'll just take it as goofy then.
Yeah, it wasn't really intimidating, but yeah.
No, but it fits the tone of what you were trying to say. It conveyed your point, your argument very well.
Yeah, but I don't know. I have a problem when like horror or things that tried to be scary do that, or they rely too much on just the lingering aspects. If they're just like going about their day and having dinosaurs just be like, is he there? Oh, he's probably not there. Oh, he might be there. Oh, he's probably not. Sound makes, and then bam, it's just like, if they do that a good bit in the film, and
I mean, when the T-Rex is attacking the kids in the car, there is no music, there's no score. That scene is pure tension. Yes, it's always in the back of your mind. The kids are going to get out of it, but you're looking at it like, how are the kids going to get out of it? I'm kind of like Ian Malkin and Dr. Alan Grant sitting in that car behind them, like, I should do something. Well, what do you do? Until they finally get the flares. And then, like what you're saying, the tension building, is there a dinosaur there or is there not? Like when Nedry encounters the Dilophosaurus, it's like, it's going to kill him. I know that's going to happen, and they're faking me out with all this friendliness. But when it finally fans out and it's in the car, and it's like, oh crap.
Yeah, that scene is just pure tension. It kind of reminds me. It's more of a serious take on it, but it reminds me in the new Scream, like when Wes is walking around his home and you have this tracking shot where they keep on milking the supposed jump scare that is coming. And it works so well with him opening the fridge. Oh, and he closes the fridge. And then he goes to get the dishes, and then nothing happens again. And it's so good because it works on that because they're clearly going for comedy and they're having fun with you, with the audience. This one is just unbridled tension, and it's like Chris said, where it's like, okay, they're gonna survive. How are they gonna survive? And the fact that you even asked that question, it leaves not a 50% doubt, but there's enough doubt that there's that are they gonna survive? And
Yeah.
I don't care how many times I've seen this film, though I never seen it in the theater, unfortunately. But
I did.
every time I'm like, the way Spielberg captures this, and it's if it's not the best, it's like top 3 or 2. One of the best movies to capture a true sense of awe. When Alan Grant sees and the fact that dinosaurs are even alive, that they brought back, it captures that magic so well, not only through the visuals and through how the characters react to it, to this brand new world, but John Williams' score, the main theme of it's one of those themes that you kind of hate because as soon as somebody brings up the Jurassic Park theme, you guys are gonna be singing it, humming it for the rest of the day. I'm
humming it in my head right now.
Yeah, exactly.
As I'm beyond excited for Jurassic World Dominion.
I hated Fallen Kingdom, and that trailer is rad. And you know I mean it because I'm using the word rad.
Like,
me neither.
Kingdom, but I loved how Fallen Kingdom ended. Like the ending of Fallen Kingdom with the dinosaurs escaping in the real world takes the concept of a theme park called Jurassic World and now has made it the reality. It is a Jurassic World. And I was like, okay, while the movie was that ending was epic. And then that new trailer, I was like, yes.
Trailer was dope.
I'm kind of excited for it. I don't know, like, my thoughts on Fallen Kingdom are complicated. Like the first half, I think it's pretty dumb fun, but the second half was boring.
But dinosaurs!
Well, the problem with Fallen Kingdom is it really repeats the mistakes of the Lost World Jurassic Park. Because what you just said, that's how I feel about the sequel to Jurassic Park. Like, have you ever seen the Lost World Jurassic Park, Chandler?
No. I've seen bits and pieces of it.
It's not
but
great,
not all of it.
But it starts off really good. And it starts off with this really interesting premise that they cut short because what they want to do is capture the dinosaurs, take them off the island, and put them in the new park being built in San Diego. And then you have a T-Rex loose in San Diego. And that is where it lost me. Even as a kid, I was like, okay, whatever. But yeah, so that I feel like Fallen Kingdom was a remake of The Lost World because it was the exact same plot. Get the dinosaurs off the island. But the way Fallen Kingdom ended was bolder than The Lost World because it ended with the dinosaurs free in our world.
Yeah. I quite like Lost World more than most people. I think it's not that most of them are good or great, but to me it's the second best Jurassic Park movie. I like the first Jurassic World quite a lot as that dumb, fun, exciting dinosaurs kind of movie. Fallen Kingdom to me it's many problems are capitalized in the auction when someone buys a real life, one-of-a-kind dinosaur for $20 million, when you have completely in your mind that this movie cost $150 million. So, like, a dinosaur is way less than half of that, and I just don't believe that.
To go ahead and go back on what... That's for my final thoughts on this, like, for... When Ren talked about, like, Scream 5 and, like, all the intention, like, oh, like, you think that he's going to be there and he's not there and he's there, but he's not there. I had a problem with that still. Like, I don't know. I didn't take that as comedy, though, because I was
so funny.
I don't know, because I didn't laugh, man. I didn't think, like, they were pulling that off as, like, a parody, even though this movie is more so, like, doing that meta thing, like, they're making fun of, like, the usual tropes you see in horror films, but I didn't take that in as like comedy. I'm like, okay, are they taking this in as a serious scary film? Like, and I felt that
it got to a point like I saw it twice. I saw it at a press screening, and then I saw it with my housemates because they hadn't seen it, and I really liked it, so I wanted to see it again. And both times, like, the audience was like laughing. It's kind of that nervous, like, oh, here it comes, oh. And it's just fun because knowing the tone of the film, knowing what it goes for, and poking fun at itself while celebrating the genre. It's just it's one of those fun rides where you're completely aware of what the film is aware of.
Yeah.
I've only
Okay.
ever seen the first Scream, and I was like, it's only okay. Maybe
Hot
that's
takes for
why
nerds.
overrated.
That's what this podcast is for, folks. And I probably dropped a big one.
Yeah, you win the hot take today.
Yes,
If that's
you do.
I don't know.
I figured I
100%.
did. Okay, so okay, let's go ahead and move on towards the last one, Matrix Resurrections, which is yeah, that's a film that we definitely. It's pretty divisive. I was gonna have like Matthew V. Haynes to be on here since he's like one of the more fans of this
Oh, he
film
loved
and really
it?
enjoyed. I think he said that he really enjoyed it. But yeah,
I know a few people who did.
I kind of got distracted by Dominican Scott's icon picture. It has Batman Beyond in it. I like Batman
Yes, it
Beyond.
does.
I like that
Yeah,
photo.
Yes, 100%. It's amazing.
Just wanted to shout that out, by the way. Anyways, Matrix Resurrection. This one was a weird one because it's like you have some things in here that could
Man.
that are potentially good, but there are other things where I'm like, it's complicated to talk about because it feels like that they are one setting it up for sequels. The other thing is that they have an idea that seems like it's being meta, but it works for an alternative universe. So I'm looking at this and saying to myself, okay, it looks like that they're not really continuing on the story that they did the first way, with the first 3 movies that they did, and just doing their own thing with like this Keanu Reeves feeling like, oh, I'm not necessarily in the Matrix. This is just a whole like psychological dilemma that I'm having, and that's fascinating. And so I was going forward with that, but then once they decided to say, no, we actually are acting like a Matrix movie, and we're going forth on continuing the storyline. If they did that, then they can make that work. But because this movie is like, no, we're just building up on sequels, and we have to go and find Trinity, and that's all the story was. That's where I felt like the movie had a big problem for me. So I don't know, Ren, I'll let you go first since like you're kind of on the time run.
I don't have many kinds of things to say about the Matrix, but I will borrow on what you said. Where that first third, where it's all dealing with this psychological dilemma, and it's on a metaphorical sense, discussing all these philosophical ideas. And the fascinating thing about the movie is that it makes a good case for both hypotheses, where yes, this was all a dream and you just imagine it. It's something just in your mind. You did actually create these games and blah, blah, even though the comedy is absolutely atrocious. The way the film tries to poke fun at itself, the way this film does meta is awful. But anyway, for the most part, that first third is like, okay, could this have been all a dream? Is this guy just a video game designer? But then it plants enough seeds where you're like, no, he's actually trapped somehow in the Matrix. And then as soon as he decides to go on and they confirm, yes, this is the Matrix, and he has to take the blue pill. I don't remember which one. One of the pills to wake up to reality.
Yes, the red pill.
Yeah.
It's the red
And
pill.
then it just becomes the most convoluted, messy 90 minutes or 2 hours, I guess, because it was 2 hours and 30 or 2 hours and 20 mess of cinematic experience that I've had in recent memory. Like, I don't like anything the Wachowskis have done since that first Matrix. And for context, I only watched the 2 and 3 right before this one for the first time. I had never seen them before. I like 3 more than 2. And
I
that's
agree with you on that one.
Yes. This one just goes against so many of the ideas and mythology that was established in those first 2 Matrixes. Like, they even fully admit in the script, like, oh, how hasn't Neo aged in 60 years? Don't know. He just hasn't. Like, why would you name, like, the new Morpheus? Why are you naming him Morpheus? That's so deliberately, for some reason, confusing. Like, call him, if he's not Morpheus, call him anything else.
Yeah.
It's just, okay, but why did you... It's unnecessarily creating this confusion in an audience. Yes, we're a little bit stubborn because we'll keep beating a dead horse on asking why that is Morpheus. Does it matter? No, but but the question is, why did you make that choice? It's so weird. to the point where they quickly have a reference to something that would make such a more interesting movie, where they talk about the Machine Civil War. I'm like, I want to watch that.
Yes.
I want to watch that. Where's
Bring
that
Neo
movie?
back for that, because you have the
Yeah.
Matrix 2 where he could mess with the machines outside
Yes.
of the Matrix. So bring him back for yes,
Yeah.
I want to say that. Yes.
And they broke the rules of their own mythology where Neo died. There was no ifs or buts about it. And yes, people work as batteries. And okay, your biggest threat, the one person in the universe who can defeat the machines, has died. But no, they brought him back to life and kept him alive so he could be. What? No, that makes us like the Mr. Smith character. I understand. Jonathan, I think Jonathan Groff does a great job as this character.
Mhm.
But in the context of the film, how they explain how this character is back and all that, it makes absolutely no sense. The film, to me, has no sense of stakes, has no logic to it. Even the messy, convoluted logic of the Matrix movie past the first one. I just understood nothing. I didn't care about nothing. I didn't care about our hero. Suddenly, Trinity has powers, and she's carrying the like. I'm all good with Trinity getting powers, and I think it works when you look at what the film is as a metaphor about Lana Wachowski finally taking off the metaphorical shackles of her life and having her transition and all that. But just because it works as a metaphor, you got to make it work as a proper story, as a narrative. You got to make it work, and to me, it didn't work on that level.
Okay, so I kind of wanted to add on to that, and I don't know if you, Durbin and Ren, feel this way or understand where I'm coming from when it comes to the Matrix sequels. But this is what the problem that I'm seeing from you, Ren, is kind of the problem that I kind of have with the Matrix sequels. It's like, why did so and so did this and that? It's like, reason. Why did they did the other things? Reason. That's kind of my problem with the sequels, and it seems like that's what you have a problem with in this one. It's like they're doing these things just because they can do that, and like since it's the Matrix, like they're talking about purpose, and we have a reason to do these things, and it's just that's their only thing that they're explaining on why they're doing what they're doing. It's like you don't have much to play off of that. So yeah.
It doesn't make for anything about. Which, by the way, there's a scene where they meet with Sati, I think her name is Priyanka Chopra's character, the little girl that was a program in the third one. They're meeting about taking down the Matrix inside the Matrix. Like I get that she's a program. She can't get out. But can't you work some magic like you do with Morpheus, the new Morpheus, and take him out of the Matrix? Can't you do that with Sati? Because like I don't know, but if the three of us were planning on robbing a bank, I don't think we'd be having a discussion about it in the bank.
Yeah.
No. Yes. That is
what's your thoughts on this, Durbin? I feel like that you would have a more in-depth analysis since you're like a huge fan of the Matrix.
I love the Matrix.
Please.
And even though when I look at the sequels, they're definitely inferior to the original, there's still something special about them. Because when you look at the Matrix trilogy, even though you see Eastern religions and other philosophies really well represented, the Christian metaphor in the trilogy is extremely strong, right? The first movie is definitely he is the one, the Messiah, and we have the death and the resurrection. So you have that in there. The interesting thing about the sequel, the second movie, the Reloaded, the most interesting thing about that one is it goes, you're the one. So what? What does that mean? And the real purpose of that movie is to examine causality versus free will. Do you really have free will, or is everything part of a system of control, causality? And it's really interesting if you don't look at like, why is this or that happening, but you look at the philosophy there and you just really strip it down to that bare bones philosophy. The choice that Neo makes, that he's trying to understand, that he's already made the choice. So the movie is declaring you have free will, but there's this illusion of control and causality. And so it's really interesting. Then you get to the third one where Neo makes the choice. He says it when he's fighting Agent Smith. I fight because I choose to. And when he gives his life, it's a very Christian metaphor because in the Bible, it says Jesus became sin to set us free from sin. How does Neo set the Matrix free from the scourge that is the program Smith. He becomes Smith. He allows Smith and he surrenders, and Smith overtakes him. And because he's plugged into the source is now able to move through him and destroy the source code that is Smith, and the world is set free. This all sets up the problems for the fourth Matrix. The biggest problem for the fourth Matrix is it's setting up sequels instead of trying to be a conclusion. And in setting up sequels, it's trying to like, wink at us and laugh with us that it's setting up sequels. But what it really ruins is the missed opportunity of what this fourth one could have been. The fourth one could have been a conclusion. So if you're continuing these philosophies, then make the fourth one a picture of the second coming. If Neo kind of represents a messiah figure, the best thing that you could have done is made this movie this picture of the return of Neo. What does the return of Neo even mean? What does it even mean that in the physical world you were able to resurrect him? Think about, again, the second movie. In the physical world, he was able to control the machines. The squiddies were coming at him, and he just stops and he does this, and the machines freak out and they die, like right there. They didn't get too much into that in the second one. The interesting thing about the third one is he's blind, but as he's walking through the machines, he can feel, sense, and kind of in that weird golden way, see the machine world. And instead, they heal his eyes, so we don't even get into that into the fourth one. We needed to explore in the fourth one his connection in the real world with the machines. We didn't need to throw this 60 years into the future, but his real world connection also makes it possible that he could be resurrected. His real world connection to the machines show there's even something above the real world, right? Because it seems now there's a plan even in the real world that in the real world he has this weird connection. How amazing would it have been to have dived into that? What is that? What does that mean? I loved the idea that they tried to re-trap Neo in the Matrix and tell him he created this video game. And you're stupid if you think this is real life. This came out of your imagination and you think this is real? You're a dummy. Even when they're sitting in that meeting and they're repeating the same stupid phrases over and over. What is the Matrix? What is it about? And all it is a montage of them saying the same things. That makes sense to me because it's the psychological conditioning. It shows you the fear that the machines have over Neo, who he is and what he's capable of being. And they have to constantly psychologically condition him that he's insane. And then he's got to realize that's an interesting story. And they failed once he really realized the truth. You don't have to re-explain to us the Matrix. You don't have to re-explain to us how it works. But now you got to show us the full consequences of what it means to be the one. He can affect machines in the real world, and he can affect what's going on in the Matrix. So instead of setting up sequels, bring an epic conclusion. It's the second coming. What does the second coming and the new world Neo's here to begin? What does that look like? That is where the fourth Matrix screwed the pooch. It just totally missed it on this one completely.
Yeah, I kind of get what you're talking about there. I also like that idea where you said, yeah, it took from like Eastern, is it like Eastern philosophy? I think from the Matrix.
They discuss several philosophies. There's Christianity, there's Buddhism.
Yep.
I'm missing a ton of others that I...
Yeah, that combination of like Buddhism with Christianity, that's kind of like, this may be like a little weird, but that's a little bit how I feel, at least when I see with Zuko's story arc in Avatar: The Last Airbender. I get like Eastern philosophy with like Christian theology with Zuko's character about redemption. But anyway, the talk about like it makes sense why the whole comedy aspect with the meta stuff that was going on in the first half, while it's like it's cringeworthy and you can laugh at it, it really is stupid if the fourth Matrix movie would be like the epic conclusion. Like what you said, Durbin, like coming back from the dead. Like, what does that mean? And what do we do with the situation where he relearns the Matrix and he finally lets people like be free from the Matrix? Like, seeing that comedy aspect just like takes it down and it makes the film a lot less epic.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. And to me, like we talked about already so many of the problems with this, but to me another problem is one of the great things about the originals, even the sequels, even though a ton of plastic looking CGI characters are a big problem, Like the action is great in the original Matrix, even if sometimes you don't feel any weight to it. They're great looking.
Hmm.
In this film, there was a great meme that someone made where Neo in the originals is like master of kung fu, and in this one you have a great scene where he's like, okay, he still knows kung fu, but the rest of the film he's like,
Yeah.
Yep. That's it.
I posted that and someone was like, well, Keanu, like everyone else, ages. Tell that to the John Wick movies.
I know.
That's not an excuse.
I mean, if he does John Wick and he has all of that John Wick training, why would there be not more of those type of fights in this movie and that type of action in this movie? It's like, why are you treating him like he's old when he's doing all of his own stunts and shooting and all this stuff in John Wick? Just
that makes
that's,
sense.
That's just an odd decision to make.
Yeah.
And I understand that this movie would want to go ahead and riff on like nostalgic references, like say this was from the first Matrix movie. Remember this scene? Remember that scene?
It's
like,
doing the exact same thing, though.
Yeah, it's doing the exact same thing, and I get it within context of the story, but you need to do a better job rather than rinse, wash, and repeat the exact same thing that's happened beforehand that you did from the first Matrix film. It's like the person who did this. I don't know what their name was. It's like they're a little scared to like create brand new mythology or just do it in a way where it's like repeating the first one, but do it in a much more unique execution. It's like it's the exact same reference, the exact same lines, the same shot for shots. It's like, and sometimes they like riff on those lines, but it's still the same thing.
Yeah, but the whole film has this kind of attitude and seemingly this kind of through line where it's like, we're better than these nostalgic baiting sequels. Where's again Scream 5, for example, it knows it's a movie. If you guys seen the film, so slight spoilers. Like the villains want to make this a movie as well. Where Matrix is like, oh, we're better than these sequels. We're not that. We don't want to be that. But then it literally plays scenes from the originals in the background. And the characters see these scenes happening, and I'm like, what? There's a disconnect here. I don't get what you're trying to say.
Yep.
I wouldn't say that it's trying to be better than the other sequels. I think it would say it's trying to be just as good.
I don't think it's trying to be better, but it has this attitude of we are better. I don't think it accomplishes being better.
I think it has a strange attitude the whole way through, and I think the attitude is explained when Agent Smith, Neo's boss, is explaining Warner Brothers wants us to make a sequel to the game. I think right there, the full attitude is unleashed that nobody was happy that the parent company wants a sequel to this. And that's what I feel like is going on with the Wachowski who directed this wasn't happy that we got a sequel. Like, why do I have to make this? And I feel like that was kind of the attitude. And I almost wonder, was it purposefully done bad? Was it purposefully changed? So the WB would be like, okay, we're done. No more.
Yeah. It reminds me of the attitude that I felt, how it hit me when I went to see Fast 9. Because from 4 onwards, actually, I like the Fast and Furious movies a lot because they're stupid, they know it, and they have this earnest feel where they're like, audience, come have fun with this stupidity because we know we're stupid. We're not trying to be high cinema. But F9 to me had this kind of cynical approach of you're stupid, you'll eat anything we give to you, and the film didn't work too well for me. And that's how it hit me. And
Maybe
Matrix had that thing kind of almost similar in that sense.
Kinda, yeah. There is like this excuse where they can do whatever they want because of this, like I said before, why are they doing this? Reason. It's a little bit lazy in my eyes because with the Matrix film, yes, that's a part of their mythology and that's a part of how they're able to tell the story of what these characters are and how they are in a simulation. But you can't use that as an excuse every single time you're trying to create a new film. You gotta like make it. You gotta nuance it a little bit. You gotta do something a little more different and creative.
Yeah, it's like when Palpatine came back. Oh, why is Palpatine back? Because.
Yep. Well, because we didn't know what we were going to do and how we were going to close it. So let's be nostalgic for the sake of it.
Mm-hmm. That's basically what happens there. I still have faith that the Star Wars sequel trilogy can be fixed, to be honest.
Yes. If these
Especially
shows
with-
continue with their high quality,
If you ask me, they only need to fix one movie because the first two work very well together.
yeah.
Yeah, kinda. I don't know if I would. Yeah, it would be one movie. I just thought about it, and now it's
Jedi
like,
could lose Canto Bite and lose that entire
Yes.
segment.
yeah,
And if we could be less, let's subvert everything. You know, I think there's interesting things about Luke's character arc and his disillusionment. And
I find that treatment so fascinating, and
Yeah.
to me, it's why I really don't like the decision Rise of Skywalker made, because to me, when they kill Snoke, like all along, I was like, oh, Kylo Ren is going to be this trilogy's Darth Vader or not, and when he kills Snoke, I'm like, oh no, he's this trilogy's Palpatine, and to me, that elevated him to a status where, okay, Kylo Ren, he's not going on a redemption story, he's the big bad.
yeah.
And then
How
they
about-
went on
how
a
about hot
redemption
take?
story.
I have a hot
Yes.
take here. So if you go back to Clone Wars, there's this planet that is a manifestation of the Force. And so you have this father, and he's got two children.
Yes!
One represents the light side, one represents
Yeah.
the dark side.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like the third movie should have taken place.
Oh
on
my
that
gosh.
planet.
There you go.
Oh, no! Chandler's
Oh.
going. It's because I'm talking about the Force.
Okay,
That
I'll
is
stop
quite a
doing
sound.
that. I'll be back. Sorry.
Yes. But what I love, or what they should have done, is they should have had Last Jedi set up Kylo Ren as the big baddie, the new Emperor. But you know what would have been a unique twist? All of these visions that Rey had of becoming Dark Rey. I think what we should have had is a character transition. And then when we get to the third one, Rey starts to become the new Emperor. And then you have Kylo start to repent and come more to the light side, and
Mhm.
have them on that planet with the manifestations of the dark side and the light side. And that could have been an epic conclusion where Rey and Kylo Ren switch places. And it's called The Rise of Skywalker, because the one who literally has Skywalker blood in him repents, turns
Mhm.
around, and rises up while Rey falls into darkness. Like, it could have been really
Mhm.
interesting to see Rey succumb to fear and Kylo
Yeah.
start to overcome.
That's an interesting idea, because I think the connection, the bloodline connection of Rey being a Palpatine is not bad at all.
No, I don't think
And-
that's bad either. That's
Yeah,
interesting.
the whole Palpatine being back, that's the bad part for me. But
Yes.
I also think one of the things that can also work with your idea, and that I think is one of the few things that works in Rise of Skywalker, is that the film establishes and develops them as this, and even the Last Jedi did that when you kind of connect the dots, as they're a deity in the Force. They're one. Together, they're one.
Mhm.
Which is why I'm really pissed at that ending where she destroys Palpatine by herself, where the last 2 hours they've been they need each other to be strong. Why is he throwing? But that's a really good idea that also connects to that, and how they develop their relationship throughout the trilogy is so interesting
Yep.
that the payoff could have been brilliant for that.
Yep. Well, it's interesting because then the way you have to end it is if you're on this planet that is the manifestation of the
Mortis,
Force.
by the way, because I was trying to remember the name.
I couldn't remember it either. But you have Kylo as the manifestation of the dark side, Rey as the manifestation of the light side. But you could see her start to succumb to fear, and then they start to switch places. But the fact is, they both exist. And as long as they both exist, there's this balance in the Force. And maybe they either have to be trapped on that planet, or maybe they have to, maybe it's a sacrifice where they both need to defeat each other. But then that finally brings about the long-awaited balance in the Force.
One of the biggest mistakes, apparently, that the Star Wars definitely did make is that they never made Rey the bad person. That was all the setup that they did for The Force Awakens and Last Jedi, but they didn't execute that at all.
I don't think that's necessarily a mistake, but the mistake to me is that they never decided which way they wanted to go until the last minute. That they had these setups of, oh, okay, could she go to the dark side? But clearly that was never a plan. It was always just the question of.
Yeah.
And what Chris brings up of if they had connected that to Mortis, that in itself could have been a really good foreshadowing of eventually the double turn, where the daughter represented the light, the son represented the dark, and it could have been a twist on that I think could have worked really well. If you want to, you can also connect the world between worlds from Rebels, and you can still have that scene of Han Solo make more sense. But while you have Han Solo showing up to Kylo finally turning him to the good side, you have Palpatine showing up to Rey and turns her to the dark side.
And that was the cool thing about that planet, is how it brought about manifestations like
Yeah.
that. And it would take that kind of thing and make sense. Because I think the reason he saw Han in the movie, correct me if I'm wrong, it's because that's what Leia gave her last breath to project into.
It is.
Yeah.
That. But that's not
which brilliant scene, by the way. I think brilliant scene. Because I think it's such a twist on that also great scene from The Force Awakens, where it's exactly the same dialogue, exactly the same shots, but it means such an extremely different thing.
Yeah, you're right about that. We just changed from Matrix to talking about Star Wars.
Well, doesn't that show you how uninteresting
Star Wars is awesome.
We went right back to what we're interested in after just
I don't have
talking about the Matrix.
Yeah, I'm more passionate about Star Wars. I don't have Star Wars, but I got the Avatar book.
Because even Matrix is just bad, but when Star Wars is bad, it's still Star Wars.
It's still Star Wars.
Yeah.
There's still something good to find in it, yes.
Even with like the prequels, I could still find something good in those movies.
Well, I
could still be something
really
good.
despise the prequels, and I still don't love them, but the Clone Wars really filled in the gaps for me and really took the prequels and elevated them for me, which is what I hope these present shows do for the sequels. Because I watched the sequels and the potential is there, but you could tell there was no real leadership. Each movie was its own thing and there was no through plan. There was no end point they were building towards to end that trilogy. But now you're building these shows and you know what the components of the sequels are. So the fact that you had Mando season 2, where they find that room that they end up blowing up that had all of those weird messed up clones that looked a little Snokish. It's like, I could see what you're starting to do there. Now you can build to this lore in a very interesting way through these characters that we love. And now you can start to fill in the gaps and make sense out of the return, like the First Order and what they are. You can make sense.
Remember that episode came out, I think it was the episode right before The Rise of Skywalker.
Yes.
So we had all these theories, and then there's the snow clones and whatnot, and we saw those same clones in Palpatine's grotto or whatever you want to call it.
Yep. So it's interesting. It's interesting. So it's like the sequels have the potential to be what Clone Wars was for the prequels for me, and I hope that's what happens. But I don't know.
If you can do that with Cobra Kai,
I've written a draft of an alternate episode 9. Because I was very disappointed by the actual episode 9, and I read the Colin Trevorrow draft of Duel of the Fates. I'm not the biggest fan. I think it's solid, and I think it would have made for a better movie. But I wasn't the biggest fan of it, so I still call it Duel of the Fates, and I keep the whole Les Mis-like battle sequence in Coruscant, but everything is brought back to Coruscant.
You can treat with what you're doing with the Star Wars sequels, if you're doing that with a show, you could treat it like Cobra Kai does with the Karate Kid 2 and 3 films. Because I don't think Karate Kid 3 is good at all. I think it's actually a terrible film. But
don't think I've ever seen. I think I've only seen the first one.
Yeah, but the thing you could do with that is that you could still include them within your universe, and you could still manage to the context that are within those films, you can add them to what's going on in here, and you can work off of that and make it a lot better with what's happening, even though since these movies are just canon, like it's not really much of a choice, they're canon, you can still be able to work off of these and figure out a way on how they're actually able to make something better for the universe. Not necessarily with the movies, but for the universe of Star Wars, you can still be able to make something that's useful for in the grand scheme of like the whole Star Wars like galaxy.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've been going at this for like 2 hours and 3 minutes.
I know,
think this
that's
is a perfect
amazing.
wrap up. Wow. We've talked a lot. I think we talked a lot about like Avatar, Boba Fett, and not really much about the Matrix, but there really isn't that much to say about it.
There
To be
isn't.
honest.
It didn't give us any meat. That's the problem with that movie.
Because it's not fun to be negative too much, and clearly all three of us were not big fans of it. So we just tried to fix Star Wars.
Yeah.
We love Star Wars.
Yeah, let's just enjoy Avatar.
Yes.
We need to do like a top five or top 10 favorite Avatar episodes one day.
Oh, that'd
Just
be
because
fun.
that would be really fun.
By the way, I want to mention something that I forgot to mention when we were talking Avatar, where none of us, so I'm calling all three of us out on this,
Oh.
none of us talked about the score of Avatar.
Oh,
My
yeah.
favorite piece of score
It's great.
is the last Agnakai, which is the final fight between Azula and Zuko, where it's not this
Oh my gosh, yes.
exciting, action-packed piece of music. It's this extremely sad, mellow, depressing track where you totally focus on this brother and sister are actively trying to kill each other.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
It's so sad. It's so depressing. In the book with the search, it's actually going in an interesting direction. I'm really curious to see where it's actually gonna end on that. So I really need to finish that. But anyway, I'm glad that you mentioned the score, man. One of the best openings as well for any animated show as well. It's like that's how you can hook in somebody with an engaging story.
Yep.
Yeah.
100%.
I agree.
Okay, so I guess we'll just go ahead and wrap it up right here. We've been talking about a lot of things, like we've talking about a lot about like how much we love some stuff, or hot takes. We got a lot of big hot takes in this episode, which was definitely awesome to have in here. So yeah, thank you, Damien Scott, for watching, and anybody else that was watching this. Ren, go ahead and tell people where they can find you on social media.
You can find me on Twitter, Letterboxd, and YouTube at Ren Geekness, where I do movie reviews and rankings. My review of Uncharted is up, and it's doing really well because it came out here in the UK. I'm sorry you guys still haven't gotten it. And I got a ton of reviews coming up this week. I think the only big release coming up is Dog this week, directed by Channing Tatum. And yeah, I got a ton of co-directed. It's him and someone else that I don't recognize. But yeah, ton of stuff coming. I think I basically uploaded 2 times every day this past week, so show it some love, and I'll be uploading not as much, but practically every day this week, where we review Peacemaker and all the new releases.
Oh yeah, Peacemaker. I forgot about that. That's actually a really cool show.
It's so good.
I didn't think I was gonna like it, but I actually enjoyed it. A lot of fun.
Me too. I was like, coming out of the Suicide Squad, I was like, oh, okay, this can work. And then the more I saw with trailers and whatnot, I'm like, really? And then I saw the show, and it really works.
Well, I might have to give it a shot. I'm not a fan of any of the Suicide Squad movies.
That's kind of my same thought as well.
Okay, if you didn't like the Suicide Squad, you might not like it, but I feel like this is the James Gunn Suicide Squad and the James Gunn from Guardians of the Galaxy in a marriage. Where I feel like the movies, those are 2 different James Gunns, and this is like all the sensibilities come together. And a killer soundtrack with 80s rock.
Yeah. So, Durbin, where can people find you at?
Well, you can find me on my channel, Durbania. So, see some of my thoughts on the Matrix there, and some of all these other things. I have an Avatar video there, lots of cool stuff that you can come check out on my channel. Most unique thing you'll find there, I do this thing called a theological analysis, where I love to find God in these stories and in these plots. And you might have heard me do that a little bit here, but you can definitely dive into it more with me over there. So definitely come check me out, hit that subscribe button.
All right, awesome. Thank you guys so much for being in this episode. We talked a lot of things, and I'm really glad how this episode went about. So, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this episode. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that like button or share, and talk about what other hot takes you would want me to talk about for this podcast, or if you want to see us do like a huge Man of Steel discussion like we did that last time. I think we need to come back and do that again, invite Rachel Wagner on here. And
Masterpiece of Steel.
Yes, I love Man of Steel.
We also need to talk about like Spider-Man Far From Home, since she has like some unpopular opinions, and that film has gotten a lot more divisive further on down the road. I think that would be an interesting conversation to talk about.
It's awesome.
All right, well,
I guess
is how we're going to end it.
I think it's a sign.
It's a sign.
Oh, and Alvin has come in to close us out.
Exactly.
I don't know if he's trying to close us out or